Hi, I'm Sarah De Silva. Welcome to this video on gaslighting. Today, I am going to expand on gaslighting in general. I'm going to explain to you what it is, how it works, and how you can spot the signs of gaslighting and get away or use a tool that I'm going to give you today to basically counterattack gaslighting, but only in a positive and healing and very nice, kind way that's not ever going to put you in danger or harm's way or anything like that. It's only going to put you in a very empowered place instead of feeling disempowered, because gaslighting does that. It makes us feel disempowered. And gaslighting is basically a term to describe someone denying your reality. And this happens in many, many ways. It happens by basically in an interaction with someone, whatever the situation may be, the person decides to not take responsibility for their part in the interaction and try to deny your reality to create some sort of outcome that is going to help them get to where they want to be. Now, the outcome is probably harmful to you. That's why gaslighting is happening. That outcome is probably something you don't want to be consciously manipulated into. So they use gaslighting so you basically don't know that it's happening. Now, the reason why I'm going to explain gaslighting in detail today is because it's really important to understand how it works so that you can spot the signs of it happening before it even starts happening, to realize where you're already being gaslit in your life right now and how to put barriers in place to then counteract what's happening in the situation and get the result that you want, or at least remove yourself from a situation where someone's trying to manipulate you to get the result that they want. Before we make any comments about what gaslighting really is, I'm going to give you a few things today that you can actually list in your mind when you're thinking about whether something is gaslighting or not. These small facets of gaslighting, they may not seem very clear to you when you first start looking at gaslighting in general. But today I'm going to actually explain how each of these parts of gaslighting are actually gaslighting and how you can pay attention to that thing, bring it up, bring attention to it with the person that you're with in a safe way, in a safe manner, and then remove yourself from the situation with your dignity intact still. So there is a bit of debate about what gaslighting is. So I'm going to remember to circle back every time to describe to you how this is gaslighting. So gaslighting is a simple refusal to accept or to validate or acknowledge someone's reality. So our reality is very subjective. Our reality could potentially be in some way different to someone else's. When it's coming to gaslighting, it's something so obvious that we're kind of confused or shocked in a way, that we're like, that's really so not true about me, which makes us feel a little bit concerned and a little bit shocked. How do I get through this situation? So usually in those situations, we will freeze. We'll get into a fight or flight situation. We'll do the fight, flight, freeze, or fawn in these situations. So we might lash out at the person. We might run away and not deal with it. We might take a behavior that we don't agree with or don't like. And then we might even do exactly what that person says or agree with what that person says about us in order to make them happy, in order to regulate the environment that we're in that situation. So it's very important to pay attention to what your natural response is when you're being gaslit. We'll come back to that later. We'll circle back to that. So there are several ways that you can be gaslit. The first one is the counter. So when you're being countered by being gaslit, it's basically like you're having someone counter attack you. So let's use the example of I've lost my keys. I've lost my keys and I'm coming to my partner and said, I don't know where my keys are. Do you know where they are? Any normal, decent person will say, I haven't seen your keys for a while, or they're over there, or I saw them last here. But a person who wants to deny your reality will counter by saying, you lose your keys all the time, don't you? Like, you're not very good at that. So they'll kind of make a shot to come back at you, to make you feel like I've done something wrong in some way. Now, a counter in an argument might be, you did this to me, and then they come back at you and they say, no, you did it. So they're basically projecting that thing in an extreme way back onto you. And basically their counterattack is to say that you did that thing. So use the example of cheating. A person comes to their partner and says, I think that you're cheating on me. And the person says, no, you've been cheating on me. Classic example of the counterattack in gaslighting. Now, how is this gaslighting? It's gaslighting because it's a simple refusal to validate or acknowledge that person's reality. They have not said, oh, I see how you feel, or oh, that's not good, or anything like that. They immediately go straight in for the attack. That's what countering is. So some other examples of the counter are, you might bring up a situation later on in the future, and then they come back and say that, no, you're remembering it wrong. Or they say, you're really bad at remembering things. So I'm pretty sure that you got it wrong, and this is how it really happened. Or they might say, you're really forgetful. Like, I need to remember things for you. They might also say, you say something like, it was really not nice of you to call me that name before. And then they come back and say, well, it was your fault that I called you that name because you did this. That's a perfect example of the counter. They're coming back at you and saying, no, I'm not going to take any responsibility for what you have just said or brought up. I'm just going to counter it back onto you. Another example is like an aggressive kind of response would just come in to be like, how dare you? How dare you bring this up? Because immediately you want to shy away, because their counter is an attack, a fully fledged attack. So you want to back away, and then you go, oh, maybe what I was feeling wasn't valid. Maybe what I was feeling, I shouldn't have felt that, or maybe I was overreacting in some way. So I'm going to question myself. All of these responses in the counter are designed to make you stop, back away, question yourself, and then basically stop what you're doing, because they don't want you to even repeat what you were doing before. They just want you to question yourself and get confused about why that was an issue in the first place. Because by countering, they're basically unconditionally setting the message to you or implying to you that speaking up for yourself isn't okay. And gaslighting is the norm when it comes to speaking up for yourself. They're going to make any kind of attack or counter attack to make sure that you stop what you're doing. Very controlling people will use counters a lot. So some ways that you can come back with the counter, come back to the person, would be to reiterate that, no, I have a good memory and I'm remembering it correctly. Or say, no, unfortunately, you can't scare me into changing my opinion about this. It's really about holding your assertion in that situation, holding your opinion very strong, and basically not allowing them by holding up a boundary, by saying, no, I'm not going to allow this counter. You have to basically address what I've spoken to you about just then. You can't come back at me with something else. You have to talk to me about this specific thing that we are talking about. They will use some other techniques that are similar, but countering is also kind of like changing the subject. It's kind of like finding a way to switch what you're talking about to get your mind off the thing so that you don't bring it up anymore. So notice how many times that they're doing that, because the counter might be, let's just change the subject. So what you can do is always bring back the attention to, no, I'm remembering it correctly. No, I think we should talk about it right now. Yes, how dare I? I think, yes, it's not that bad of me to bring it up right now. So I think it's okay for us to talk about it. And then if it gets aggressive, you can always walk away. But always hold strong with the counter. It's like, bring attention to the fact that they have led the attention from what you've said onto something else, or bring attention to what they're now talking about, like how it's different to what you brought up, because that brings attention back to, no, I'm not changing what I'm talking about. I'm going to counter back to what I was talking about in the first place, and I'm going to bring it up again. In those situations, if they keep countering back and keep refusing to address the situation, then basically stop what you're doing and take a moment to accept that they're not going to address your issue. They're not going to validate or acknowledge it, and then move on. Find acknowledgement or validation somewhere else. Go talk to someone else. Go journal on it. Do some affirmations to confirm that, yes, I remembered it correctly. I had every right to bring it up, and I'm not going to stand down in this situation. You'll notice that politicians will do it a lot, or lawyers will do it. So they'll bring up, like, you bring up a situation, they'll counter by saying, but haven't you had issues with this before? They'll bring it back to you to make you feel like, yeah, maybe I was confused, or maybe I shouldn't have brought that thing up. So how this is gaslighting, how countering is gaslighting. Remember, gaslighting is a denial of your reality, and countering is basically switching it back onto you to make you feel confused, to make you stop and think, maybe I shouldn't have brought this up. Maybe it was wrong of me, or maybe this wasn't so bad after all. And then therefore you stop and you dismiss your own concerns. So the next gaslighting technique is called withholding. They will basically do anything not to address the problem. It's different to countering because they will basically not have a response to the situation. They will either say things like, can you just let it go? Or can you just stop? But they won't address the issue afterwards. They might say things like, let's talk about it another day. Or they'll say, I'm not willing to address this right now. So they're saying, let's do it another time, but then they don't address which day or time that they're actually going to do the thing, which then leaves you kind of feeling like, okay, well, my concern hasn't been addressed. They might say things like, in an aggressive way, like with the counter, which is like, how dare you? They might be like, oh, why are you bringing this up again? Or they'll be like, not this again. Oh God. They'll express frustration, which is a withholding technique for you to stop what you're doing. Basically, they want you to withhold as well. And they will say things like, this is in an inappropriate place or time to bring this up. So not here, not now. But then every time thereafter you try to bring it up, they'll be like, not here, not now. And every time you ask them, well, when will be a good time? And they say, well, this time. And then you say, okay. And you bring it up at that time. And they go, well, oh, I'm really not feeling well, or this just isn't a good time, or I don't really have an answer for you. That is withholding. So it becomes quite toxic because you're feeling like your concern isn't being addressed. It's being withheld. A resolve is being withheld from you. So you're going in cyclical kind of motion through the situation, playing it out over and over and over, going through the analysis paralysis of what's been happening with the situation without having a resolve by going to that person. Now, sometimes because they're hanging you on a string, you think that it's okay to wait for a resolve to come from this person. It's best not to do that, because they're not going to give you the answer that you want if they're not willing to talk about it in the first place. So it's best to go talk to someone, journal, or go to therapy, or, get validation from somewhere else, and understand that this is a gaslighting technique. And the way that it is a denial of your reality is by basically saying your concern isn't good enough for me to address. Your feelings aren't good enough for me. I'm denying that that's a problem, and I'm denying that that's even an urgent issue to talk about. I'm denying that that's even important. And that's how it is gaslighting, because gaslighting is a denial of your reality. It makes you question your reality and feel confused. So first we have the counter. Next we have the withhold. Now, how to counter someone's withhold is to basically say, no, I'm not going to allow you to do this. If you really want it addressed by that person, especially if you're in a professional setting where you're kind of trying to get an answer about business or money, it's really important to stay with that person and keep circling back to the question until they got willing to talk about it. Now, if you're in a personal situation with this person and they start to get aggressive, it's always best to walk away as per usual. But there's nothing wrong with trying to get an answer out of this person and bringing attention to the fact that they are withholding, and that is a gaslighting technique. You can say, I'm sorry, but this is gaslighting. You're not actually addressing the situation, and it's making me feel like my issue isn't important. And that's really concerning to me. So can you please talk to me, or at least give me some sort of answer? And then if they're not giving you some sort of answer, it's really important to go get some validation elsewhere. I highly recommend seeing a therapist and telling them that you've been experiencing gaslighting, and that you've had a specific issue that hasn't been addressed, and talk to that person about the issue. They will be able to validate that you had a very valid concern that needed to be addressed, and they might even give you some ways on how you could address that specific problem, some ways that you can actually address it specifically. But otherwise, some other ways that you can address that is to say, well, when are we going to speak about it, and then follow up, and then make sure that they actually hold to that promise. Another effective way would be to bring up the fact that it is being brought up many times. Sometimes people, in their busy lives don't realize, oh, you've actually asked me about this 3 times already. So it's important to go, okay, well, I've asked you 3 times already. I asked you here, here, and here, and it wasn't addressed. So can we talk about it? Also, express how it's making you feel. Like, I really feel concerned. It feels like you're really not paying attention to or addressing how I feel in this situation. It's important to bring up how you feel rather than bringing attention to their behavior in those situations, because then they can make a decision. Basically, they're going to make a decision. Oh, is this person is feeling bad, so I'm going to address the concern for them, or they're going to continue in their abusive ways and not do it. So pay attention to what their response is and how they react to that situation. So the next tactic in gaslighting is called trivialization, also known as minimizing. So basically, a person will minimize your problem to therefore make you feel like it wasn't a valid concern. They'll trivialize it, they'll make it seem really, really small, and then therefore you just let it go. A lot of the time, I find that this is huge in the medical industry, because I've personally experienced medical concerns that were actually apparent medical concerns, then I was gaslit because they said, oh, it's just all in your mind, or they say, or it's not as bad as you think, you know, or that's not bad at all, or that's normal. So I noticed especially that feeling of the dismissal of how you feel, and making your problem smaller actually makes you feel like you're questioning yourself, and makes you feel like your own determination of whether something is right, wrong, good, bad, you know, up, down, it's not right. It just makes you question how you do things and whether you're doing things correctly. So another example is they'll say something like, you're too sensitive, or you really like, you make things just, you get so overwhelmed and you make things so much bigger than they are. That's a form of trivializing, and it's not fair to trivialize something when it actually means something to you, even though it may not mean something to them, or they may not have reacted in that way to that issue. So it's important to bring attention to how you are individuals with differing feelings, and that you can have a different feeling to that person, and that basically by telling you that you're sensitive is actually projecting how they would feel onto you, right? So they're not feeling strong about their own emotions in a situation, therefore they go, oh, well, you, like, I wouldn't react that way, so you're being like this. They're basically projecting their own feelings. So they might say other things like, oh, so what, get over it, like, why are you still holding on to this? That's a form of, you know, minimizing how you feel, because you seriously have a valid concern, and they're like, why is this even an issue? And they'll be condescending about it. They'll be like, really, why are you so upset about it? They'll say things like, are you okay? And you'll feel like, oh, maybe I shouldn't be so upset about this thing. You'll feel really confused about your feelings about it. And it's not fair to make you question how you feel about something, because every feeling is subjective. Every feeling is everybody's own feeling. It doesn't matter whether you feel something different to how I feel it. Every feeling is valid. They might say something like, on the aggressive side, they might say something like, are you trying to start something here? Like, are you trying to make something out of nothing? That's another way of trivializing or minimizing how you're feeling, because it's saying that that's not a thing. Or they might just say, just stop feeling that way, as though it's something that you can control. They're basically saying, well, just stop, because you can control how you feel, because it's not even an issue. They're basically like, imagine a child who's kind of crying over a toy that they dropped on the floor. A parent would say, just stop, come on, it's silly. But in a way that's trivializing how they feel. A more healthy way would be like, I know it's upsetting that we drop things sometimes, but it happens, it's okay. And then we move on, and we're actually validating how that child felt in that moment. But then we go, okay, we can let it go now. It's okay, isn't it? And then we sit with them in that feeling, let them feel the feeling, and then they naturally find a way to move through it themselves. It's also the same with, you know, adult situations, like especially in the workforce, in the adult workforce. Me as a woman might find something upsetting, and I might cry, and it's a very normal thing in the workforce for men to be like, well, I wouldn't cry over such a thing, but to me it made me upset, but to them it may not have made them upset. But it's still not right to trivialize how someone else feels in a situation, because you don't know how they're really feeling. And that's gaslighting, because you're making them question how they feel. You're denying their reality by making it seem different to what it really is. That's how it is gaslighting. So you can do things to counteract this by saying, no, this is how I feel, and you have to accept that. And you can be really stern about it. Or you can say something like, well, if you're going to say that I'm too sensitive, unfortunately, I'm going to have to walk away. That's just not acceptable. You have to be really assertive in these situations when it's about your own feelings, because when someone's trying to deny how you feel, you can naturally question how you feel and then deny how you feel yourself. So you gaslight yourself in the end. And then you can naturally, in the next situation that you go into, gaslight yourself before you even start feeling those feelings. So it's important to validate your own feelings and then validate back to that person that you're allowed to feel those feelings. I am allowed to feel these feelings. Please do not make them seem smaller than they are. I'm feeling upset about it, and that's okay. You can also say, well, I can't actually change how I feel about it. Bring attention to how, like, that's my feeling as opposed to your feeling. And I can't feel how you feel. Okay. You have to say that to them. You can also kind of in a playful way say, it's really interesting that you try and make it seem like I feel how you feel, when actually I feel this way. You can be really, really kind about it and kind of play it out, spell it out for them. Because sometimes when someone's lacking empathy, truly lacking empathy when it comes to an empathy related disorder, they really don't know. And having it spelled out to them will make them start to really think about it. And another effective way, and sometimes people pleasers can find this really hard, but if someone is trivializing or minimizing how you feel and they react in a way that's like, oh, I can't believe you're reacting that way, you can say, you know what, this is how I'm feeling, but it's not my problem how you feel. Okay, your feelings are not my responsibility, just as much as my feelings are not your responsibility. Okay, so we're going to have our own feelings inside our own selves, and we're going to feel them and we're going to deal with them ourselves. Okay, I'm not pushing my feelings onto you. You're not pushing your feelings onto me. So let's stop that and actually acknowledge that we are individuals who feel things. It's all about feelings here, but it can also be like a trivialization of what you said. I said that. Oh, well, you didn't say it like that. Well, no, I did say it like that. And I did mean it like that. So keep asserting what you felt and what you thought or what you said or whatever it may have been, as long as you assert the truth in those situations. And if someone keeps trying to assert that it wasn't true or continuously tries to gaslight you by denying your reality in that situation, it's always best to walk away, say, I'm not dealing with this. I'm sorry that I'm not going to take behavior like this. I'm not going to take treatment like this, and leave the situation, and then go and get some help around the situation as well. So the next gaslighting technique is diversion. It's in a way kind of similar to the counter, but slightly different, because a counter basically pushes something back onto you, diverts something back onto you. Counterattacks something back onto you, like projection. So the counter is projecting, but diversion is diverting attention to something else. So it's kind of like you come up to them with an issue and they go, oh, look, what's that? And you forget about what you're talking about. They could do something like, oh, what's for dinner? And just completely ignore what you said. They could also say, yeah, that's valid, and I did that, but you did this, and that's way worse. So by diverting the attention to something that you did that was worse is basically denying what they did right now. So basically you've come up to them with an issue and you're like, oh, I'm really upset that you did that. And they're like, yeah, but you did that first, so you're worse for doing that. That's diverting to something else in order to basically not take responsibility, not acknowledge, not validate the situation at all in that moment. They might also say things like feeling victimized, like you're bringing up an issue and saying, oh, this happened. And they go, oh, so they hate me. They hate me, do they? Or you hate me. Or you might say, look, I really don't like it when you call me names, or something like that. And they'll be like, oh, I knew you hated me, that's diverting the issue onto something else. And immediately you stop thinking about them calling you names, and then you go, oh, no, I don't hate you. What are you talking about? And you want to fawn over them and be like, oh, I'm so sorry I made you feel that way. When originally they were making you feel that way. So it's diverting the whole situation back onto themselves. It's kind of diverting victimhood onto themselves so that they don't have to deal with the issue, or diverting attention onto something else so you forget about it completely. How that is gaslighting is by making you forget, which is a denial of your reality, basically like manipulating you to not talk about or remember or think about the thing. Or it's denying that you had a valid concern by saying you were worse, or like, oh, you hate me. So basically denying that what they did to you was upsetting. Now what you have done was worse. So it's really tricky diversion, and you have to bring attention to it straight away, because people can do it like that and you are off the topic straight onto something else, and now you're playing the people pleaser, trying to help them out of, or help them regulate their emotions or something like that. It's really, really common with narcissistic people to, when you bring up an issue with them, they will play victim straight away and be like, oh, and then immediately you have denied your entire situation. You're now fawning over them, and the power has switched onto them. So now they have entire power onto you, and they might even divert the entire situation onto you later. You might find that with narcissists, they'll go maybe a day later or even an hour later, you know, I really don't like it when you call me names. And you're like, what? I just brought that up with you before, and you diverted it back onto me and said I hated you. And then I made you feel better and we talked about it. And now you're saying I call you names? That's gaslighting, and it's diversion. The tactic within gaslighting is diversion. So ways that you can find resolution through that is, say you bring up an issue and they say, yeah, I did that, but you did this and that was worse. You can say things like, yes, we've established that I did that, and we even spoke about it. We even had a discussion about how I learned that that was wrong. We forgave each other, but this issue still isn't being addressed. Can we please address it now? Or you could say if they try to divert the attention to something else, like, oh, what's for dinner? You can say, yep, let's talk about dinner in 5 minutes. Can we just have 5 minutes of talking about this issue so it gets resolved? So basically always sticking to the issue. If they say, oh, you hate me, so they're diverting onto something else, you go, no, I don't hate you. Let's just talk about this, okay? I know you're feeling emotional or triggered about what I'm bringing up right now, and that's okay. We can talk about how you feel after we address the issue. Is that okay? And then get their permission, and they'll say yes, usually, if they're willing to address and talk through the issue. Now, if they're emotionally immature, if they're narcissistic, they might keep gaslighting. They might get aggressive. They might keep diverting. They might keep counterattacking. They might keep trivializing. They might keep using all of these tactics, but you have to stick to the issue at hand. Bring up the fact that you want to stick to the issue at hand, that it's not healthy or beneficial for either of you to veer from what you were talking about originally, that it will help both of you to move through whatever you're dealing with right here, right now, if you stick to the issue at hand. It's really important to connect that with the person that you're with, because the more you do that, the more you relate in a healthy way. It's so much easier to relate in a healthy way when you're establishing language and boundaries and barriers like that, where you're going to be like, no, I'm not accepting behavior like that anymore. That's it. I'm done with it. They can't really do anything about it, because eventually you're going to leave. You're either going to walk away, or they're going to have to change their behavior. So the most common and the worst kind of gaslighting is denial. And it is the key to understanding how gaslighting works, because denial is how gaslighting works. It's a clear denial of your reality. And rounding all of these tactics back, the counter, the withhold, trivialization, diversion, including the last one, stereotyping, and denial. They all lead back to denying your reality. They all lead back to making you question who you are, what you think, how you feel. And the most common forms of saying basically you're wrong, or you're remembering it incorrectly, or denying your reality, is saying something like that. You're remembering it wrong, or that never happened, or completely denying that something happened, or saying something happened slightly differently. Like a great example, you are having an argument, they say, I hate you. And then you come back to them and then you say, I really don't like it when you say, I hate you. That was really horrible. And they go, I didn't say I hate you. I said, I hate it. It's really, really manipulative, because they're not saying that they didn't say it. They're not denying that they said it. They're just denying how they specifically said it, which makes you confused. You're like, oh, did they? So they did say hate, but did they say you or it? I can't remember, because I was feeling upset. Makes you question your reality, makes you question how you remember things, makes you question your own certainty and your own confidence in what's happened and how you feel about things. So they'll say things like, that never happened. That's the most common one. Or they'll say, you're remembering it wrong. Or they'll say, it didn't happen like that, you're overreacting. Or they'll say, let me tell you how it really happened. Or they'll say, what are you talking about? That one's a really, really terrible one, because you'll tell them something, or you'll say something, and they'll be like, what are you talking about? I don't know what you're talking about. That's weird. I've had that happen to me, and it's really, really disheartening. It makes you feel like the pit in your stomach drops, like questioning my own memory, something that was a big part of my memory, and it wasn't right. Am I crazy? You really question your own sanity in these situations when someone's denying your own reality. So they might say something like, you're crazy. You have a tendency to imagine things. You do this all the time. You always forget things like that. See how they can slowly manipulate you into questioning whether you remember things correctly, whether you know your own reality, whether you know your own self. They try to convince you that they know you better. Complete gaslighting, because basically by saying those minor denials, or twisting things or slightly changing things to make you question yourself, it makes you start depending on their opinion. It makes you depend on their reality to make sure that you feel sane, that you feel certain and confident. And that's how an abuser wants you. They want you depending on them. So some ways that you can counteract denial is by really reiterating that you know what happened. Saying, no, I know my reality. No, I remember it correctly. No, I have a great memory. No, I remember things correctly. Yep. Actually, no, I actually write things down a lot. Yeah. If you have to, write it down. If you think you're being gaslit by someone, write as much as you possibly can. Get as much evidence as you possibly can. Because when they next deny your reality, go back to the evidence, because that is proof that they are gaslighting you. It's not to show them, it's to show yourself. Reiterate, I know my reality. I remember things clearly. I can see that you're trying to do this. I can see that you're denying my reality. I can see what you're doing, but it's not going to work on me. That will stop them in their tracks. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes they'll keep denying. Sometimes they'll keep gaslighting. Sometimes they'll keep saying what they know is true about you. But you have to keep feeling certain within yourself that you, that you know how you work, that you know how you feel, and then walk away. Don't stay in a situation where someone is constantly denying how you feel, denying your reality, denying what you think, making you question your own thoughts and your own feelings. It's dangerous. Reiterate that this is not working. Say, this doesn't work on me. I know how gaslighting works. You're going to withhold now? Okay, you're withholding. That's gaslighting. Okay, you're countering now. That's gaslighting. Do you really want to keep gaslighting me, or do you want to talk about the situation? Because I'm willing to have a mature conversation if you are. And if they're not, let it go. Because they're not going to give you the answers that you want. Now, the last kind of gaslighting, like I mentioned, is stereotyping. So with stereotyping, the same kinds of responses always work in these situations. Stereotyping will come under other ones like dismissal or trivialization, minimization, could come under counter. It could come under the diversion. These kinds of statements about you, these overgeneralizations about you, will come as forms of gaslighting to make you question yourself. The most apparent one right now is generalizing everybody who is iffy about the vaccine, calling them a anti-vaxxer. Huge stereotype, because I know of many people who have been vaxxed with all the vaccines, yet are very wary about having this vaccine. So people can gaslight people by going, your issue doesn't matter because you're just this, right? You're just that. And it's generalizing and kind of minimizing them at the same time. So they can generalize or stereotype you in many ways, but here are some examples. All women are crazy, all men cheat, all men are useless, teenagers are stupid, children must be seen and not heard, you're too young to know any better, you're too old to be able to do that, you should have your life sorted out by this time, because you're a woman, you can't do this, because you're a man, you can't do this, because you don't know enough, because you don't have a degree, you don't have any say, because you don't have this position or authority, you don't have any say. So stereotyping you as, you know, someone who's lower than someone else. Stereotyping can also be parents are always doing their best, because that's not true. It's stereotyping all parents as being inherently good when they're not. Also saying that everybody who is religious is good, because that's not necessarily true either. People who say, I go to church on Sunday, so that makes me a good person. That might not necessarily be true. So it's overgeneralizing and lumping a type of person into a kind of idea or value or belief or anything that it may be, to basically minimize or make that person question how they feel. So the best response in these situations are always like, you're doing this, you're stereotyping me right now when you don't know much about me. I think that you don't know enough about me to make generalizations like that. So why are you? I'm really curious. Why are you making a generalization about me like that? You can also say, well, I know my reality and it might be different to yours, but that's not true. And then walk away. People who stereotype like to make generalizations about people because they like to judge people. And judgment is a form of basically manipulating someone to make them feel like they're lower than, and also manipulating yourself to make you feel like you're higher than someone else. So by judging others, we're basically saying I'm better or holier than thou, when we're not. We're all the same. We're all born inherently good. We all learn some bad techniques to relate, but we can also change them. We can also shift how we, relate with people. We can also pay attention to when someone is trying to manipulate us in these situations, bring attention to it, and then try to resolve it. Like the many ways I've said in this video today, like having a way to come back at any response that they're going to come at you with, knowing how they're going to respond. Generally, we know people pretty well. We know how they're going to respond. So knowing, what kind of response you're going to give to that response that you know they're going to give you is a great way to stop gaslighting dead in its tracks. And having a canned response like, I know my reality and I'm not going to allow you to change how I think, or I'm not going to allow you to confuse me about what's true. Always have that ready, because it's very, very effective. It stops people who are trying to manipulate you because it makes them think, oh, this person knows what I'm doing. It makes them question next time they come and try and do it. They might try again. They might do it over and over again. But as long as you stay firm and stick to what you know is true, as long as you stick to the issue at hand, it's very hard to allow someone to continue to gaslight you over and over and over again. Let me know, what was the biggest, best thing that you learned about gaslighting on this video? What's the thing that's really going to help you moving forward, going out into the world, dealing with manipulative people? And what are you going to go teach someone else now when it comes to gaslighting, so that we can help someone else to stop being manipulated as well? We can all make the world a better place, one person at a time. Thank you for being here. Thanks for watching if you've gotten this far. And please subscribe here to my channel on YouTube. Otherwise, you can follow me over at Instagram or on Twitter at Heal the Mum Wound. That's MUM, Heal the Mum Wound. Have a great day, everyone.